Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Phyrexis livestream. My name is Pete Murray. We're here today to talk about Sweden. Coming out in Civilization VI Gathering Storm, which will be released on February 14th, just less than a month at this point. And joining me today are lead designer Ed Beach and Civilization senior producer Dennis Shirk. Guys, thanks for taking time to be on the show today.
Welcome, Civ fans.
So we got a bunch of cool stuff to show today to talk about. We're going to talk about Sweden and their abilities. We're going to show off some changes. We've got some World Congress stuff to show off.
Yep.
So you guys ready to dip in?
Absolutely. Let's go for it.
Okay. So I'd like to thank Carl, who's our driver again today, warmongering Carl, and he is going to bring up the screen that we always look at the start of these programs, Christina's abilities. So if you guys want to screenshot that, now's a good time to do that. So, Ed, why Sweden?
Sweden really goes part and parcel with the fact that we are introducing a diplomatic victory this time. So every time we introduce a new victory type, we want to make sure there's at least several civilizations within our pantheon of civilizations that are good at going for that particular victory type. So maybe the first time you play for that victory, you can try them out and they'll give you that nice boost towards it.
Right.
So Canada is one of the two civs, and we've already shown them, back before the holidays. But we thought Sweden was a great civilization to fit that other slot as the second diplomatic civ. Just the fact that the Nobel Prize is awarded out of Sweden every year, and they're known for sort of becoming sponsors of great people, and they were neutral in the Second World War, and so they have that peace agenda sort of associated with them, and so we felt like they were a great new second person in that diplomatic victory game.
So they have a neat set of stuff. Dennis, you were going to say something?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, unlike the barbarian who will be driving today, the other half of the coin for her is that she's amazing at playing towards a culture victory. So you've got this diplomatic angle, you've also got the culture angle. You've got more slots than you can know what to do with in terms of the Queen's Bibliotech is going to give you an amazing amount of slots for your art, literature, etc. You get bonuses to your existing stuff where you don't have to theme it. It'll just theme automatically as long as you fill everything up. So she's amazing at generating culture.
Yes. This is a civilization that when I've played, it was almost like I was winning a culture victory by accident. I was aiming for a diplomatic victory and I was generating so much tourism. It was crazy. So Carl has us in a game that we're playing right now. So this is the coming to the end of the medieval era, I believe. End of the classical era, going into the medieval era. Thank you, Carl.
Yep, and we're all set for a golden age. I was the one who played the first two eras of this game, so we are all set to have a golden age coming out of this, but we're not going to spend a ton of time here in the medieval part of the game. We want to really see the part of the game where Sweden shines. We want to kind of focus on that Renaissance, industrial, modern portion of the game, so that's where we're going to spend the most of our time this hour, but we wanted to kind of set the backstory.
Okay.
And so in terms of the backstory, we have this sort of intermediate position in the middle of the continent between a number of other civs. And one thing Sweden likes to do because of the open air museum is they love to found a city in each of the 5 different major terrain biomes. So you have to sort of stretch out Sweden's core base that is probably in the grasslands plains and find a desert city, which we've already done because there was a desert to our southeast.
Oh.
And then to our north, where we were going to go in terms of snow and ice and find some, maybe a tundra city, there's this huge range of mountains dominated by this volcano that's just erupting. And that's a great place. I believe that's the next city we found is up at the top of that river in the shadow of that volcano. But what we want to do is, see whether or not we can settle up in the tundra up there, but what I unfortunately found is that's where Canada is in this game.
And they're going to be taking over that tundra terrain for themselves.
Yep.
So we have while Carl is playing us through real quick, we do have a question from chat. They're asking if Christina's theming bonus applies to archaeological museums or just art museums.
It's any building that has at least 3 slots, or any wonder that has at least 2 slots will auto-theme as long as you fill it.
Right.
Okay.
So it absolutely does.
Yep.
And the Carolian unit, what tech does that unlock with?
That unlocks, it is a tech. It's, I don't know, we'll pull up the tech tree and I know that the Open Air Museum is with the Civic, That's nationalism,
Right.
which people have been wondering about. I think the Carolean was announced when we did the first look for the video.
Okay, we'll go back and check on
I
that.
don't think people have been pondering that.
So Carl finished the Oracle.
Yes, and that was a key part of what I was trying to do here. Sweden gets extra favor from great people points, so we want to get as many great people as possible. So we absolutely want to focus on anything that's going to give us extra great people points, and the Oracle is probably the best wonder at doing that.
Yeah.
And it's not a minor amount of favor. We're talking 50 favor per great person.
And we just got a great person, so we're up at 60 favor right now. And you'll see if you go through these first few turns that Carl's playing, we're going to get some trade requests from other people because of that early favor. Mm-hmm. And it's medieval is when the World Congress first takes some action.
Right.
So having some favor going into that very first World Congress is very useful. Most people do not have much. So we get a lot of offers to trade for it. In this particular game, we have some ideas on what we want to do with that favor that we want to show off to people. But if you don't have a real need to be active in that first World Congress, you can actually get some really nice trade concessions early in the game from the favor that you get that everyone else won't have.
Definitely. Somebody asked if there have been any adjustments to Norway, and what I will just say is stay tuned. You will see that Norway is going to be well positioned going into Gathering Storm.
Yes, and this game was set up. We put in all the civilizations that we'd already announced as our opponents, and then we had 2 more slots, and we thought, well, let's put some of Sweden's neighbors into the game. So we ended up adding Norway and Russia, and that will lead to a Great Northern War type state that we're going to get into very soon.
Excellent.
Now, Carl has a special session proposal that's popped up here, basically because Norway's being a bad boy. But this is going to be a good example of why the decision whether you spend your favor or save your favor is important. Because if that emergency is targeted at you, you want to make sure you have that bankroll to be able to maybe vote down an emergency somebody's pointing at you. So it's basically asking him if this is something that he wants to initiate. Do we want to vote on something like this? And I think it's worthwhile.
Yeah, Preslov that Harald took is right on our border. So we have a great chance to liberate it in an emergency. So we definitely would love to see that go through if we can. So it's going to cost us 30 favor. That's half of our favor. There's no getting that back. That's kind of the cost of bringing this to the world's attention. You have to get in all the diplomats' ears to make them care about this and get a session.
But because it's right next to us, we're strategically placed to be able to take advantage of that emergency and reap the benefits of winning an emergency like that. So it's worth it for us to investigate.
So let's see what happens.
So we go in here, and then this is a typical World Congress voting screen, and we want to spend a little bit of time talking about exactly how the buttons here work.
Yeah. So you have 31 favor coming in. The first vote is always going to be free when you're voting for these proposals. So if Carl goes ahead and just gives it like an upvote, for example, so he supports it, no big deal. But it's going to increase incrementally as you put more favor into it. So the higher your votes go, the more expensive it gets. So the next vote's going to cost you 10. The next vote's going to cost you 20. So really easy to vote shallow across many proposals. But as you can see, you can potentially spend a lot. Now, there's a good flip side to this. If Carl decides to sink all of his diplomatic favor into a vote and he loses, he's going to get it all back. So that's something to keep in mind, depending who you're going up against. We know that Harold, as you can see, has 71 diplomatic favor. So there's probably a decent chance that he's going to vote this down just because he has a lot of that diplomatic favor.
We're going to need somebody else to support us on this. And I'm not sure. We have a couple declared friends. We don't have any allies. I think Harold has some declared friends. So there's some people that might come in on this on his side even, which would certainly nix it for us. But it's worth a shot because we can get the favor back if we...
It's worth the gamble. You can see in the rewards, we get 100 diplomatic favor back if we actually accomplish the goal of liberating the city-state. And because of the amount of favor he's got, it's a good gamble. We either get our favor back from losing, or we have a good chance of getting even more by winning.
And one of the reasons we set up the mechanic that way so that you are refunded the favor if you don't win is we want to make sure that one nation can't dominate the World Congress over and over again. So if you get something through in the World Congress, you've sort of... spent your favor for that portion, maybe that time period of the game. It's going to take you a while to build that back up. And somebody else, it's very much like the way the great people competition works, that once you get one great scientist, it's probably someone else's turn after that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we tabulate our favor. We get it ready, and we are going to submit our votes.
Now keep in mind, not everybody is going to vote on every resolution. We can see that there's actually another city-state emergency that occurred somewhere else in the world we weren't involved with.
We haven't met that city-state, so it doesn't,
So if we
pass for us. So
we
we
can
don't get the
expand,
right
it'll
to
tell
vote
us,
on it.
oh, you weren't part of this. This is somebody else's domain. So that's one that passed, but as you can see, if we close that one back up and go to the Harold one, that one failed because, as we guessed, Harold used all of his favor and plowed it into it.
And Mansa Musa at the moment is friendly with Harold. That's going to change later in this game, but he actually threw in one vote on a free vote, but he threw it in on Harold's side, so that helped to sink our quest to get that city-state emergency passed.
And we did get our diplomatic favor back too, as you can see, because that resolution failed.
It's been refunded. So we have had a couple of questions about the Nobel Prizes come up in the course of this chat, but I'd just say stay tuned. We're going to have more to talk about that in a little bit. Somebody wanted to know, does your voting on the World Congress affect your relationship with the other civilizations?
At the current time, it doesn't in terms of, they're not looking, oh, I saw you voted this way. So in general, though, there's a lot that goes on in terms of, people always wondered when we first introduced World Congress, can you buy people's votes? And strictly speaking, not. But as Pete's mentioned before in the Mali stream, you certainly can buy people's favor, and that's equivalent to buying the votes.
Yes.
So because favor is such a flexible currency, and it can be traded, but if that person doesn't like you, then it's harder to get them. You have to spend more gold to get them to. It all kind of works together using that favor currency.
There's a fine gameplay line that you always want to walk to. Obviously, with something like that affecting resolution or our relationships, we have to balance that out because you could potentially get into tricky gameplay territory if you have to worry about now this great new gameplay mechanic, but now you don't want to engage because you're worried about offending somebody with all the other ways that you can possibly offend somebody in the game.
It's something that as we do longer term balance, we might look at, but for the first introduction of the system, we wanted to stay away from that.
Okay. So
it looks like the regular World Congress
Congress comes up now.
off.
So this is different from the special session. So let's talk about this.
Now, a lot of the audience who, if they've seen last week's session or some of the sessions before on previous live streams, are familiar with this one. So this is the first World Congress that comes up. And like we mentioned before, there's always going to be 2 resolutions by default that are error applicable. And the mechanics work just about the same, but there's some interesting things on this full screen that aren't necessarily on other screens. So if Carl, for example, looking up at mercenary companies, he can mouse over the little head underneath there, and he can see, based on what an AI's agenda is, how they're going to vote on something. So most likely, Coupe is going to vote in the positive, and you can see that Pachkuti and Harold Hardrada are most likely going to vote in the negative, and they're probably stomping around the World Congress session going, this is just who we are, this is how we're going to do it. Not everybody is going to be a pairing here, because other voters will not necessarily have this as part of their agenda, so it's going to be a little bit more secretive, but those guys are all in.
And notice this is not only just the historical agenda that's queried here, but it's also the hidden agenda that's currently assigned to each of these leaders.
So this can potentially give you information about an agenda that you don't see yet.
Yeah, or at least a hint as to which one it might be. And I think there are a couple people in this game that have the agenda where they care about like the size of your military force.
Right.
The standing army agenda. And so they're going to be the ones that are on the wanting it to be cheap to buy army units.
Yes.
So that's probably the 2 that we see down on the bottom, the B side of that proposal.
Yep.
So these resolutions that come up, these are randomly chosen each time there's a World Congress session.
Within the ones that have been selected as appropriate for that time period of history. So it's very much like the way you're used to the Golden Age dedications working, where if you're in a certain part of the game, there are certain Golden Age dedications that are going to be available, but as you get later in the game, those may go away and be replaced with other ones.
Right.
It works the same way here in World
And as you get
Congress.
towards the end of the game, the diplomatic victory resolution starts to come up more and more frequently.
Exactly.
And that's where you start plowing your votes into it. Yes.
So this is one of those things where 2 have come up for Carl, and he's got to decide if either of these are actually worth spending extra favor on, or if he's kind of lukewarm to each. So it looks like he was in the lukewarm territory. He's still deciding. But one thing you did notice is that he was able to close the World Congress window because all of these resolutions are going to pull you into a million different ways. We actually explored a lot on the UI side on how we can give players more information based on the resolution you're voting on, because you need more information. The easiest thing to do was to give them all the information. So you can kind of close the window, open it back up, close it if you want to look at some other information.
So Carl was just checking which religions are adjacent to us.
Yep.
There's Protestantism on one side, started by Harald. On the other side, it's Islam, started by Mansa Musa. So we're in between. Right now, we're anti-Harald, so I think he's chosen Protestantism as the target for the resolution where you can condemn heretics of that religion and get favor for it. So that would be a good opportunity for us to gain extra favor. So he's going to put the 30 favor that we have in on that side. I think we care more about that than the mercenary company's resolution right now.
So now we wait till everybody tabulates the results, and then we get the results of the resolutions. So what happened here? So now it is cheaper. Sorry, no, it's more expensive to do it with faith. Yeah. Sorry, and looks like that was pretty popular. We voted for production instead of faith. Now, do we get refunded some of our favor that we put in on that?
And you'll see we still have 33 favor up at the top. So basically, we actually ended up losing both of these.
Yes.
But we get our favor refunded. If you're on the wrong side, you get your favor fully refunded.
Yep.
And if you're, say, on the right side, you're on the A or the B side, but your target wasn't selected, you get 50% of your favor.
Okay.
Now, an interesting note on the possibility of ties, because as you can see with the way these votes are breaking down, that ties can happen, and they do happen fairly frequently, more frequently than you think, especially if you're playing like a 4-player game. It's whoever is putting in the greatest percentage of their favor is going to win a tiebreaker.
Okay.
So if you want it, and you want it badly, go all in. Because if you happen to tie, you're going to have a greater chance of winning that tiebreaker because you put everything into it. Versus the person that has like 200 favor, but only commits maybe 60 or 80, you're going to win that tiebreaker.
So got a couple of technical questions about when civs vote in their turn order and how often the World Congress comes up. So the World Congress comes up, there's a meter up in the corner that you can see fill up until the next session. And that accelerates over the course of the game. So Carl will move on here and he'll mouse over that. So now it's 25 turns until the next session. And as you move up into the
I'm not sure it accelerates during the game. It just starts at medieval and then it's regular after that. But it is tied to game speed, so it will be more frequent on a faster game speed.
Okay.
And then obviously, depending what events happen in the world, those are when proposals can come up that are available to you to vote on if you need to call a special session. So if somebody invades a city-state, somebody flips your holy city, those proposals become available to you, and you'll actually see them on the screen. There will be a third button at the top of the UI if you have a special session that you're able to call.
Okay.
And those you call during your regular turn, and the system becomes aware that someone has flagged it. But the actual World Congress sessions themselves are sort of this intermediate turn.
Like clockwork.
That's between regular game turns. It's like timeout, halt. We're gonna stop regular processing. Even in multiplayer, it works this way, where it's no one's turn. It's the World Congress's turn. And so we proceed, everyone submits the World Congress votes, we get all the World Congress votes back in, and then it can go back into the normal gameplay.
Now, that's what's really cool about the World Congress in general, because you can count on the clock, no matter what. Like in this particular case, we know that for 25 turns, we can count on those voted bonuses being in place. So you can plan for that. Special sessions are the ones that you can't necessarily plan for because they all react to what's happening in the world. But World Congress gameplay, you need to be able to count on that.
And the special sessions do build off the same emergency interface that we had for Rise and Fall. So when they do come up, they'll go right below the tech and civic choosers.
Yes.
And so you'll have all the information about how much longer those are lasting. For all the World Congress resolutions, you're going to have to look up at the top of the screen and see the meter there and see how many turns it's lasting. But it is really important to think about these are game rules that have passed that apply to everyone in the game. There's no circumventing them.
Right.
But they're going to go away after a while. Yeah. So there's like one that I particularly like where all of a sudden the districts I build start acting as culture bombs.
Yes.
That one's fantastic.
And I have to time it so that I try to, when that comes up, I'm hopefully have some districts queued up, or I can get some districts queued up real quick so that in that 25 turn window, I can, succeed in using that policy as many times as possible.
Sounds good. All right, well, we're going to actually move forward a little bit in time and show you the game as it advances a little bit. So we'll briefly go into the future as we load up here. And then I've got a couple of other questions for you guys as well, too. If you have more diplomatic visibility on another civilization, are you going to get any more information on how they vote, or is it just limited to them kind of storming around World Congress and saying, like what you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, and you always know how everyone did vote. It's just, I assume you're talking about visibility of how they're going
to
vote.
vote. Yeah.
At the moment, it's presented the way we showed it there, and it's based off of the agenda information. But that's certainly, yes, something that we could be looking at down the road. But again, first cut of the system, we wanted to keep it clean and simple so people can understand what was going on with it.
Okay. Multiplayer. If you want to win a diplomatic victory in multiplayer, you only need one member of your alliance, basically, to win the diplomatic victory, for your team to win the diplomatic victory.
Yes.
Correct.
Right.
Yes. So that is...
and I guess the other key thing to talk about in terms of World Congress is this is a brand new voting mechanic that we did not have in Civ 5. And Civ 5 was a little bit more, things could pass or they could fail, but there was no A or B side. And,
right.
But we really specifically looked at the way World Congress often played out in Civilization 5. And in Civilization 5, there were lots and lots of cases where things would get proposed and they'd be blocked. And then the World Congress wouldn't meet for another 30 turns, and there would just be nothing happening in the world because of the World Congress. And we wanted things to change. We wanted the game rules to be shaken up. We wanted the nothing has happened result to not really be possible. So that was a key reason that we went for this particular mechanic, because this way, if the let's have big armies, let's build lots of guys is not the way the world opinion is going, well, then we want the world to swing towards let's not build up our armies right now. And so one side or the other we feel like should be sort of politically dominant at a given point in time. So we wanted to make sure that's sort of how the World Congress worked.
Sounds good. All right, so Carl has prepared our save, and we're going to jump into the future now. So Ed, you want to kind of walk us through what's going on at this point?
Okay, so we have jumped quite a bit ahead. We had a dark age in the Renaissance, and I believe we're now in the industrial era, and we are in a heroic age. So we got to enjoy 3 out of the 4 dedications for this age. So we are getting science adjacency bonuses, giving us production from campuses. We actually have great campuses in this game because we got Newton. So he's giving all our universities extra science. We have a whole bunch of mountains. We actually made Pachacuti upset because we were settling too close to mountains.
Okay.
But those are helping us have some really good campuses in this game. We have the Reform the Coinage bonus, and we have the Golden Age bonus that's allowing us to settle cities on other continents and give us lots of extra population. So Carl has made a push in this game. He played it between that earlier save and this version, and he has done a good job of getting us into some new terrain biomes that we weren't in before. So down to the south, we had found that there was this other continent. It took us a long time to clear it out of barbarians. There was quite an infestation there.
Yeah, we watched a little bit of that yesterday during our practice.
Yeah.
Carl smiting the barbarians righteously.
Right. So now we have our Tundra city there, and he has a settler on the way who's going to create our snow city for us. I'm not sure which. Oh, he's going to go down towards Crater Lake. So that could be like a national park snow city.
Mm-hmm.
That will give us a city in the 5th biome.
Okay.
And so that's going to make our open air museums as powerful as they possibly can be. We haven't quite made it to nationalism, but I think we're, 6
He's
turns
6
away.
turns out, so it's pretty close. So you can see the open air museum is there for that. So.
Yep. And he even has builders hanging out back in the homeland.
Ready to go.
Ready to put some open air museums in place once we get to that. So he's gotten optimistic that he can take on the Norwegian Navy with his Navy. And we'll see if that works out. He's got 2 privateers and a caravel.
And now he has the great scientist Charles Darwin.
Okay. Well, there's only one place Darwin should go.
Are you suggesting he go to the Galapagos Islands?
Well, and Carl is showing us that he's already found the Galapagos Islands, so I think I am suggesting that.
Okay, all right. So we're going to try to send Chuck out to go catalog some finches, and hopefully he'll get there before the end of the turn. So normally I would be concerned about Mali marching all those forces around my borders, but they're allies of ours. So we have an economic alliance with them, which is probably profitable for both of us.
Yes.
And it looks like he's kind of engaged in frank and open religious discussions.
It looks like our civilization is still split between Protestantism and Islam. Oh, wait a second.
So Matthias is not happy that we have not been buying,
Yeah.
recruiting our vassals.
We've had trouble getting city-states in this game. There are some really nice city-states here, but I have not played a good envoy game, at least the part of the game I was playing. We just got a ton of war declarations. What happened
that's
here?
Really good. Oh dear. So Matthias, is he allied? He's allied with
And we just, I think we got joint warred by
Matthias
Yep.
and
And
Harald.
Yep.
Yeah. Ooh, okay.
the Black Army is headed our way.
I'm not worried. War is Carl's thing.
Yep,
Declares a joint formal
war
war.
against us. Okay. Well, we've wanted to fight Harald all game long.
Yeah, well,
And now we're actually, I'm not quite sure how many Carolians we have, but we have enough that we're feeling, I think, reasonably confident about this as well.
yeah. So they're being attacked from sea, so that's annoying. So there's some of our Carolian units, and we're going to have to send them into,
That's smart. Keep the trade routes between us and Mali.
yeah, and Canada.
Maybe Canada's our ally as well, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So somebody had asked about how city-states affect diplomatic favor. You get diplomatic favor per turn for each city-state that you're the suzerain of.
Right.
So that is an excellent way to curry diplomatic favor by being the suzerain of a city-state.
And I would say, while I was playing this game, I was getting more in my favor from the Great Person bonus from Sweden. So I was having trouble with the city-state game. That was not as big a source as normal, but if you're playing, maybe a Pericles or somebody who's really good at the city-state game,
Yes.
you can end up being a strong player in the World Congress without having a specific favor bonus.
Yeah. So he's going to kick on some Norwegian ships for a little bit. That'll be fun.
Headed over to found the city of Crater Lake.
Yep. And that city that's on that one tile island is kind of a pain in the neck. I mean, that's really situated in a really...
I think we need to take that. And yeah, it's like he's got a little Malta out there interdicting our traffic in that the sea lanes there.
Yeah. Carl, what are you setting a map pin for? Oh, he's going to put a canal there.
Yeah, he has some.
That's some prime canal territory.
Yeah.
Actually, that's fantastic. Wow. Yeah, that's good.
So Karlstadt needs to get its trade goods out to the sea, I believe.
Yeah.
He had anticipated the canal because he was going to. He's actually already built a harbor there inside the lake.
So, Carl, go ahead and open up the Queen's Bibliothek again, just to reaffirm something I had mentioned earlier about how amazingly powerful this can be. It doesn't take up a slot in your typical theater district like the rest of your culture generating stuff is. And if you look at the number of slots that this gives you...
It does take up a slot in your government plaza.
Government plaza, yes.
But that's fine.
Yeah. We don't care about government. We're playing a culture game. Well, we do a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this building's amazing. And if you're playing a culture game, this is something that will basically add jet fuel to your tourism victory.
Yeah, if you hadn't run into a conflict with Pedro before, this is liable to start getting you in trouble with Pedro. As he's like,
because all the great artist, writer, and musician
yeah.
points.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and then the other thing that we've set up pretty well is the other way we get great artists, get great scientists and engineer points are through the university buildings and through the factories.
Right.
That's another part of Sweden's bonus. So I believe we have 3 campuses. We have an industrial zone that's coming along as well. We have a factory in it, but we have not powered it yet in Stockholm, so we'll have to look at that in a minute.
So yeah, and you can actually see that he has a low power icon. So until that's powered, it's just not going to be operating as efficiently as it could. So
the nice thing is that doesn't mean that it's a penalty. It's just simply the way it was before. But if you do power it, that gives you some
It just gets
bonuses.
better.
Yeah, it gets.
Who's the great general on that block? Gustavus Adolphus.
Nice.
That's very, very thematic.
Christina's dad is out campaigning for her.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure he's very happy.
I love the Carolean unit icon. That's just the hat. That's all you need is the hat.
So I was really excited. Okay, so you want to talk a little bit about pillaging? Because this is exciting here.
Okay, so people are like, Norway really needs some kind of buff, and let's think about what you can do in Norway. We actually it wasn't specifically looking at Norway, but in general, we wanted to find out whether some of the strategies in the game were as powerful as they should be, not only in the beginning of the game, but throughout the entire game. And one area where we felt like it just didn't grow the way it should is in coastal raiding and pillaging.
Right.
So in the beginning of the game, it felt strong, it felt good. The Viking longships initially, when they're out there doing pillaging, you're getting enough gold that it's very meaningful.
Right.
But that didn't scale up through the game at all. And so by late game, you would maybe have Norwegian submarines or things like that doing coastal raiding and so forth. And, you weren't getting a very useful reward back. So what we decided is it was sort of more of a systemic change that was needed. And so we have made an adjustment. It goes all the way back through the base game and Rise and Fall so that February 14th, everyone will see this, whether they've got the new expansion or not, so that pillage rewards now scale through the ages. So you can actually get hundreds of gold from a coastal raid, and your culture and science rewards, so maybe in the beginning of the game, you were pillaging a particular improvement and getting culture or science from it. It was worth maybe a quarter or a fifth of a technology. Mm-hmm. Without that scaling, it became useless to do that at the end of the game because you're getting, a 20th of a technology.
Right.
Now it'll still be that same percentage, that quarter of a technology per pillage. So it just feels so much more significant and powerful now.
And it's definitely, definitely a huge
And
buff
if
for
anyone
Norway.
can benefit from it,
It's going to be Norway.
yeah. Now, one of the civs that we're going to announce in the next coming weeks also is going to do very well because of it, but we won't talk about that, will we?
Not today, we won't.
So how are our Caroleans doing? It looks pretty good. Is Preslov's
we're
in
pressing
trouble?
Preslov, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Oh, and we have some siege equipment there. And Charles Darwin, is Charles Darwin going to get intercepted by the Norwegian Navy?
That's just like real life.
Yeah, we might have to take out the lead unit to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, mission accomplished.
All right.
And we're not imminently going to have a World Congress session, but it's definitely creeping up on us here.
It is for sure. And we'll actually, what'll be nice is this time, because we're a little bit farther along, you'll be able to see some of the later era special session.
And what we definitely want to
some of
talk
the World
about
Congress
is
choices,
the
yeah.
other big, we talked a lot about special sessions earlier today,
Yes.
and we've now several times gone through how regular resolutions work, but we have not spent a lot of time on scored competitions, which is sort of the third portion of the World Congress, and so that's definitely something that we'll be getting to here.
Yeah, that will be good.
There's a question I saw go by earlier, which is what are some of the other ways that you can earn favor, for example, from alliances?
Okay, so it's 1 favor per turn per city-state that you're suzerain of. Mm-hmm. It is 1 favor per turn for each government that you have times the tier of the government. Right. So if you're in a first-tier government, you're getting 1 extra favor per turn for being in that government. But as you go through the game, and now that we have tier 4 governments, you can get up to 4 favor per turn from what government you're in. Mm-hmm. It also, favor also comes from alliances. So you can kind of be building that voting bloc, that coalition that's going to all operate together in World Congress. And so we have 4 alliances right now. So that's probably actually the biggest contributor. We're getting 5 from alliances. So what that means is one of those alliances is a level 2 alliance.
Yes.
Because a level 2 alliance gives you 2 favor per turn. and then the level 1 alliances give you 1.
Oh, we got the steam power technology, so it's canals forever now. No end to canals. Dennis, what's your preferred tool for getting diplomatic favor? I like buying it from people.
Yeah, I found that too because Mali is generally, everybody has their go-to civ. And while I've played a wide array of civs on especially this new expansion, I tend to keep heading back towards Mali. And there are ceilings on what the AI will trade to you.
Oh yeah,
we'll be aware later if you're swimming in favor. So you don't have to worry about taking advantage of, like I can just buy 100 favor off of an AI. It'll never let you do that. But I actually think that that's a great strategy for amassing it.
Okay, and I think we've talked about this before, but in case people don't remember, military engineers can spend their build charges to add production to 2 different districts, both of them being our new districts, the canal and the dam.
Yep.
And so Carl was smart enough to set up some military engineers in place to get those canals built very quickly once the technology, the steam power tech was unlocked. We just put in a coal plant that we're going to work on in Stockholm so we get that city powered.
No longer convinced that destroying the other civilizations of the world is enough, Carl is now going to wreck the environment as well too, for our benefit. No,
Yeah.
I'm just teasing him, but no, seriously.
That's how he is at home too. He just burns coal to heat his house.
Just constantly.
To cook on.
Yeah,
So.
you can tell where he is. It's pretty simple.
Now, one really interesting thing that happened in this game was I've had a couple skirmishes with Norway before this major war.
Right.
And I noticed that from the Middle Ages on, they had quite the cavalry.
Yeah, I mean, there were like coursers coming out his ears and a knight unit.
So I was like, what's going on? Does he have 5 horse resources? And, so I looked at the Norwegian territory, and there is 1 horse resource, but it wasn't even inside his culture borders yet.
Oh.
And I realized that what was going on was he was taking advantage of the Hattusa city-state ability, which has been updated for Gathering Storm. So if you have revealed through the tech tree the knowledge of a particular resource, strategic resource, but you have not actually hooked it up into one of your cities.
Right.
Hattusa is sort of the back channel arms dealer who knows exactly how to get you those things at the right time. And I was hoping to get Hattusa as my suzerain, but no, it's been Harald who's been able to dominate that most of the game.
Yeah.
And so that's where he's gotten his horses, and he's actually done quite well in terms of several points in the game. He's been the strongest military in terms of overall military strength.
Yeah. Dennis, here's a question for you. Somebody asked how we choose the songs for Civilization. You want to talk a little bit about how Jeff and Roland have gone about picking songs in the past?
I would love to actually have like a dedicated program to that because Jeff Knorr and the rest of the composition team with Roland Rizzo make the most amazing music for the game. They have a whole process they go through in terms of what's going to add to the game well, what's going to layer, what they'll be able to have fun with in terms of making different arid versions of it. So a lot of thought goes into it, not just about what it is, if it's applicable to the Civ, but how easy it is to work with in terms of adding more modern variations of it. So
yeah.
And they have the orchestral recordings that we've been doing in
they
Prague.
go to Prague every year.
Every year for those. But they also love to work with choral groups. Usually with every major release or expansion, we want to make sure there's enough choral music that we can get some of that in there. So yeah, I love the way they kind of come up with a plan. They look at the whole slate of civs that we're going to be working with, and like, we get the choral music here, we can do some amazing things so that there's a nice variety across all the new music that's coming out at once.
Yeah. So a couple things have happened. Carl did finally relieve Preslav. Preslav has now been liberated. So let's go ahead and we'll look at what happens if we liberate it. We get...
So in the past, you would get a diplomatic modifier.
Right.
And there are still diplomatic modifiers related to liberation in the game. Specifically, if you liberate a particular Civ city, they're going to love you kind of forever, a little, just like they've always has for that. But we've backed down a lot on some of the third-party modifiers. You'll see some of those that we've had in previous versions have gone away.
Yeah.
Because the favor and the grievance system works in place of them now. And so this liberation, the kind of, it's going to give us basically the largest single award of favor you can get in the game is, we ever give out is like 100 at a time.
Right.
And so liberating a city-state like that, it's going to just give you so much goodwill with the world community that it'll help you either get the vote towards diplomatic victory down the road, or it'll help you get some key resolutions passed in the World Congress.
Definitely.
Or if you attack a city-state later and you need to fend off
kind
the
of
emergency,
sweep it under the
you
rug.
can sweep it under the rug with that 100 favor.
Yeah, that Preslov is way different than this Preslov. And now you can notice we've got that huge, big chunk of that. So that's
791, wow, okay.
Yeah. Chuck's going to continue to sail across the ocean here.
And it's because of our heroic age. He's sailing 3 extra spaces per turn. Because of the heroic age dedication. As Carl was telling me, his plan was to get to the Galapagos, and I was like, wow, that's a pretty long trip for us to get to in this live stream.
It's looking a lot more reasonable now.
I think he's going to make it.
Yeah. So we'll move our Wolfgang von Goethe into position there. That'll be good. So the 100, somebody has a question about the scaling of the value of 100 diplomatic favor. That's actually a pretty valuable amount of diplomacy to have on hand regardless of the era of the game. Like, because of the way the vote escalation works. Having 100 points to be able to invest in something really means you can really put your finger on the scale for that. So it really is a valuable thing to have over the course of the game. All right, now, are we going to be able to see some of this improved pillaging? Yes, we're going to get 184 culture.
Wow,
off,
that's nice.
And that
is going to get us our open air museums.
Yes, it will. So again, this is Sweden's unique infrastructure piece that they can develop. This is a tile improvement that they get. And like you said, we're trying to get cities on as many biomes as possible so we can maximize the value of this resource.
Now, the open air museum, it's a little bit interesting the way it works. Some people have pointed out on the forums, they're paying very close attention to what we've been doing with Gathering Storm, that we've released a bunch of civilizations that are only good in one terrain type or another. So we've got Canada that's good in snow and tundra, and we've got Mali that are good in the desert, and the Inca that are good in the mountains. And then we totally flipped it with Sweden, because Sweden wants to get a sampling of each of the different biomes. And it's kind of weird, what's this whole deal with the open air museum? Why does it get that bonus? But I've been to several open air museums. I have not been to Skansen, the original one in Stockholm.
Right.
Would love to do that. But I have been to both the one in Ukraine, that was the first one I went to, and I also went to the one in Wales.
Okay.
And I feel like, to me, they're sort of like the essence of how a people or a nation sort of present their case, sort of exhibit A for why they should win the culture victory.
Okay.
Because they've collected buildings from all the different parts of the nation. I read up a lot on Skansen, and that's particularly interesting because Sweden is so diverse climatically with the Lapland area all the way up to the north. But they wanted to represent that, so they have examples of how those people live and the buildings that they live in and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, I love that concept of an open air museum, and I really wanted to get it into a civilization title. I feel like it was sort of like a very meta piece of thing that we do in the real world that sort of is like, almost like we're trying to win a culture victory, but I know people that set up these open air museums didn't know about the civilization game, but I feel like it's almost perfectly tuned for it.
Yes, and in your office, I have definitely heard people seriously refer to actual real life things producing different tile yields. So it doesn't surprise me that you guys come out. It was an interesting choice. I have to admit, when the spec came out and you were like, this is what we're going to do for Sweden, I was like, that's very interesting. And then reading about it, Skansen and the history of that and kind of the history of the entire approach, very kind of a late 19th century.
And now there's multiple Swedish cities that have the open air museums,
yes.
So that fits in well. And it's a concept that's really grown and spread all the way across. There are dozens and dozens of them in various countries, and it's cool. I loved going to the Welsh one, and you could see things that were very uniquely Welsh, such as history of slate mining and those kind of things. So.
And who wouldn't be fascinated by that? Somebody has asked if the open air museum gives away tourism immediately, or do you have to unlock flight first?
In general, all of the tourism from improvement
Yeah.
come through flight, so I'm pretty sure that works the same way.
Okay. Have we released the diplomatic victory video? No! But on February 14th, you'll be able to buy the game. And if you play on online speed as Sweden, you'll probably get a diplomatic victory in about 2 hours.
Maybe not the first time.
Yeah, I think that's optimistic, but
Yeah. So this is pretty good. Now, there is a little bit of a risk of building up all of these canals.
our canal's open. We need
Oh, no.
we need to sail something through the canal, though, Carl.
Yeah, before
I'd
Harold
say
sails something.
buy at least something you can embark and send through there.
Siege tower's not good at going through canals.
No. Take that crossbowman. Sail him through. Who needs to defend your city when you can sail majestically through a canal?
Yeah. That's a pleasure I did not realize I was going to have with this expansion, was just how much fun it is to sail units through an obviously land hex
Yeah.
without having them to switch form at all.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun.
Oh, we're going to get...
We're going to be it. We're going to get it. We might be able to get it. Hopefully we'll be able to settle that pretty soon and get the full bonus for it. Have either of you guys been to Sweden? Somebody is asking.
I have.
You have. Okay.
But I was not in tune enough to know to go to Skansen.
There you go.
I was in Stockholm. I walked all around Gamlestan. And just an amazing area of an amazing city, but did not know exactly everything I should be checking out.
There's very few times that Ed doesn't go on vacation, sees some sort of wonder or city or place, and not have it end up in the game after he comes back.
That's very true.
Yeah, my travel budget could be funded by anyone.
He's available, folks, for
Yes,
birthday
we'll
parties
see.
and corporate events. Now, astute people have pointed out that Stockholm, which was a scientific city-state previously, is now no longer a scientific city-state, as it has been subsumed into Sweden as a civilization. So, do we have a new scientific city-state?
We do, and they're in this game. So if we pop open the list of city-states, we'll see Bologna, and they have verbatim the Swedish ability. And the interesting thing is Sweden wants to send their people to the university there.
Yes.
Just like everyone in the
Everyone in the
medieval
Middle Ages did,
Renaissance
yep.
wanted to send their scholars to Bologna.
Yeah.
Because it's great people points. So we've been having trouble with the city-state game, but that's the one that we've absolutely prioritized.
Mm-hmm. So a couple questions about the Nobel Prize. Again, when we get to the World Congress session, hopefully you'll be able to see some more of that, but that is an example of one of the scored competitions in the game. So that is going to be a way for you to see that.
93 faith from that village.
I think Carl is purposefully dragging his feet getting to anything that has a piece in it.
Yeah. In the meantime, he's like, watch me kick all of these guys in the rear end. So
How many turns are we away from the World Congress session? No, I don't think it's too many. 5.
5 turns. Jeez. Carl, be nice to them. He's going to have peace, but he's going to have it on his terms. That's what he just told us. Can you only have one open-air museum per city?
Yes.
Yes. So it's a little bit like the hockey rink for Canada. Can't spam them all.
Carl's had quite the epic naval battle going on since he loaded up the save.
Yeah, this is an impressive...
But it's nice to see a strong Norwegian Navy, representing for Harald.
Yeah.
I feel like that needs to be there, and Carl's invested a lot in that naval force, but he's really needed to.
And Chuck arrives at the Galapagos Islands. And he's like, you know what are cool? Finches are cool.
And sanitation.
As
when
we
he
all
realized that
know.
there were no bathrooms at the Galapagos Islands.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so there he goes. We're sailing through a canal.
But he's a land unit, so he tends to get out of his boat when he goes across the canal. He takes to the walkways.
But he was able to denounce that unit that was there.
Yep, because we're at war.
Question for you: is it now possible to trigger an emergency in the ancient and classical era due to the even though the World Congress starts in the medieval era?
Now, that's something that doesn't come online until the World Congress properly comes
Okay.
online. The ancient medieval, the ancient and classical, holy cow. No, that's right. Ancient
Yeah,
classical era
classical.
continues to be the Wild West of civilization where anything goes. And
Frequently does. Salted fields and all that. Do resolutions for the World Congress show up more than once?
they can. It's possible. I believe there is waiting in place to allow new ones to come through, but it is possible.
And somebody is asking why the Carolingian, I can't talk either, why the Carolingian looks like the redcoat, and it's because there's a limited number of ways to depict 18th century coats and facings, even within the context of that. So, although I will say, tabletop gaming, I played a really great campaign of the Great Northern War once. I played as Russia. And there was one battle I just got my butt kicked by the Carolingians. I underestimated their capacity to punch me in the nose, and so that's really whoa! It's so wet.
Okay, yeah, this river's flooded a number of times. We only have the natural disaster intensity on 2 in this game, so it's kind of what we're going to recommend people go with when they first try out Gathering Storm for the first time.
Yeah.
So.
Or if you like me, just crank it the whole way up to 4 and
Well, there's some
wait
people
for
we're
the-
not going to be able to talk out of doing that. They're
Bring-
going to want
bring
to
the
try
fire.
that no matter what.
Yeah.
So Ed has done some balancing in that, by the way. So just based on a lot of playthroughs and play testing and feedback from our QA department, et cetera, the intensity level of 4 was not quite intense enough, and like risk and reward for volcanoes. So volcanoes are even more powerful than what we've seen before. So if you are playing on a 3 or a 4, volcanoes actually have a chance with more major eruptions stretching out to 2 tiles out from the volcano, making it a little bit riskier if you're
And that's
planning on...
just the damage. 'cause
Yes.
it's 2 tiles out. The
Yep.
fertility yields are still in that volcanic region where you see the volcanic soil right
Yeah.
around the volcano.
So he's
But
definitely
it's possible.
turned it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the week that came online, that was a little bit of a surprise and not an entirely pleasant one.
So, yep, you get what you pay for with the disaster intensities 3s and 4s.
Go big or go home.
So is it possible to adjust the strength of global warming in game settings, same as natural disasters? So we have kind of this disaster slider.
And it is directly tied to that.
Okay.
So if you're on 3 or 4, the rising sea levels will creep up a little bit sooner in the game,
Yes.
with a little bit less carbon dioxide having been put into the atmosphere. So you're going to have to be on your toes for that as well. So yes, on the 3 or 4, you're most likely to have a world that deforms and changes over time as you go along. If you keep that setting down lower, you'll have a little bit more time to play with.
Yep. Does the percentage of deforestation and reforestation affect the rate of climate change? Or is it only the effect of chopping increases the risk of drought? Yes, the more deforesting
Yes,
you do.
that's chopping will do both. So it will make a particular area that is lacking in any kind of vegetation features more susceptible to drought, but it's also going, we look at the global rate of deforestation, of planting of trees, and take that into consideration compared to, for that map size, what we would expect. Mm-hmm. And if the deforestation is happening faster than we would expect, it's going to, basically the carbon that's been put in the air is going to have less things to
pull it out.
pull it out, and so global warming is going to happen faster.
So we just traded Coupe some smokes for some diplomatic favor. So that's going to be.
Hey, when next time World Congress comes around,
Yeah,
you
no.
might be a better friend
No,
if you
it's-
pass some of the tobacco over.
It's definitely.
So shall we, since we're getting real close, shall we start talking about scored competitions a little
Yeah,
bit?
yeah,
Just so
so-
we can kind of be all ready for them when they appear. So I guess the key thing about scored competitions is they don't replace resolutions. Once you get a little bit later and you're deeper into the World Congress system, you get them as an additional thing that you can choose to opt in for. So there's several scored competitions that people are going to be used to from Civ 5, things like the World Fair, the World's Games, the International Space Stations. There are also some brand new ones that are related to Gathering Storm type of features. So there's disaster relief.
Yep.
If you've been hit with a natural disaster, that system looks at how much damage a natural disaster is called. So just because a volcano goes off in your territory,
yes.
if you didn't have any structures nearby for it to damage, you're not going to be a candidate for international relief.
But if your city center gets hit, you're going to be more eligible for that.
And so you become eligible for that. The way that one in particular works is all the other nations of the world can give you gifts. There's both a city project that can be run, and you can actually go right to the trade table and send gold across. And
that was what Dennis was talking about last week, is Mansa Musa just be like, can I write a check to cover this?
Right. So if you're gold poor, it makes it nice because you can still run these projects or run a lot of these projects if you still want to compete without actually spending the gold.
So now all of these type of competitions have a running score that shows up just sort of the same place where the emergency user interface appears. There's a banner for each scored competition as they're running. So you can click on that and see kind of what place you're in so far.
Yes.
And so like the Send Aid competition, it's about how much you can either devote your cities to helping that player or just money from your treasury. But there's a great reward for being the top contributor there.
Yes.
It's a tiered reward system. So there's a first place prize, and then there are also
ran prizes.
For like the top 25% and the next 25%. But the top tier prize on the Send Aid project is a diplomatic victory point.
Yes, which is huge.
that is major. That's quite a good reason to go in on that.
So got a couple of other questions coming up. If the eras are progressing quicker than usual, e.g. on Deity, do the resolutions update accordingly?
Yeah. It's not set up that, this resolution has to happen before these later ones can come online. It's just looking at what era of the game are we in, which ones are valid in this era. Let me shuffle those up and deal out a hand of them.
Now, if we had conquered a city in the tundra, would that give us our 5th terrain type for our open air museum? We can capture cities and they'll count towards that. Okay, here we go. That sounds good. And then, how many diplomatic victory points are needed for a diplomatic victory?
At the moment, it's 10.
Yes.
And so the diplomatic victory resolution also starts appearing after a while. That's an additional thing that's going to happen at World Congress along with the resolutions and the scored competitions.
Yes.
But the thing is, every time you have enough favor to be, applauded for your efforts so that everyone can give you the pat on the back, that's going to push you towards diplomatic victory. That's worth 2 victory points right there.
Yes.
So it's not that you have to win that vote 10 times. It's actually more, typically you win that maybe 3 times, and then you do other in-game actions to get that diplomatic victory
winning
point.
some aid, certain wonders that you can build. They're scattered throughout.
Right. I think we can go ahead and reveal that we have updated the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
And so instead of providing the 2 settlers it provided before, it now gives you a diplomatic victory point when you build it.
Yes.
The other sources of diplomatic victory point, beside all these scored competitions that we're talking about, one of the Nobel Prizes gives you one. And then we've also buried deep into both the tech and civics trees. We'll let people find it when they get to the randomly generated tech and civic tree. But deep in those trees is also a source of a diplomatic victory point or 2.
Yes, and there's also some interesting ways in there to kind of stymie people's diplomatic victories, which will be useful as well too. You can also, of course, shoot them in the face, which is also
stymies them very well.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're properly
ready for a World Congress, and Carl is just...
I was just enjoying going
Carl's
back and
just
forth.
like, look at my boat.
Now we're all holding our breath.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited because this is all kind of random for what comes up. So I'm be interested to see.
Yeah, we've played it a couple of times, but I think we've had different results.
Wow, I've never had Patrick Cootie with the environmentalist agenda. Every time I play against him, he's like, I like trees chopped up into little pieces and burning in my furnaces. Yeah.
That happened to me last week, where he was the largest CO2 contributor far and away.
Absolutely. All right, now to the good stuff, the diplomacy. All right.
Okay, so we're going to actually probably just scroll through these first two, the luxury policy and the border control policy. Now, the border control one was the one I was talking about before with the culture bombs.
Yep.
But we have the Nobel Peace Prize. So this is an example of how having Sweden in the game has enriched our pool of possible scored competitions, and the World Congress system has decided it's time for the world community to think about having one of these scored competitions. And so the Nobel Peace Prize, if we get enough people to vote in favor of adopting that, is going to award a diplomatic victory point to the highest contributor.
Correct.
And the highest contributor there is going to be assessed based on score that you get by generating diplomatic favor over the course of the. I think most of these run about 25 turns or so.
Yeah.
And so it's whoever can earn the most favor during those 25 turns has been the most diplomatic, the most peace prize worthy. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to get that top reward. And so not only will they get the diplomatic victory point, but they're going to get the rewards from the other tiers as well. So they're going to, they're just going to stack up the great people here.
So the Nobel Prizes come online in the industrial era, but they continue for the rest of the game as well, too. They are potentially competitions that you'll see over the course of this.
Right. Yes.
Now, somebody had asked earlier, why is Sweden potentially putting something on the board that's of benefit to the whole world? It just so happens that Sweden is also very good at competing for its own Nobel Prizes. So, it's like, I'd like to sponsor this prize.
It's interesting because it's a gameplay bonus we gave somebody, but we didn't just hand it to them.
No, you do have to work for it.
We let them put it out on the table, but then they have to do the work to actually earn it.
Yeah. So new districts built for this player act as culture bombs. So Carl is dumping a whole ton.
Yeah, and basically we've been wrapping it. Let's see, compared to the other civilizations, Canada's doing well, as we would expect.
Yeah, but
Hungary is doing surprisingly well, but they may have been banking their favor all game.
Right, but we're burying.
Yeah, that's sort of how we played this save, was let's save it all up for when we're in the live stream, and then we'll spend it all in the live stream. So, we kind of knew we wanted to take our shot like this, so here we are.
And this isn't the only prize that they add to the game, though, is it? In terms of Sweden.
They're all three of the competitions, right? The Peace Prize, the Literature Prize, and the Physics Prize are all in there.
Right.
And they have a different, each scored competition has a different set of awards.
And a different set of things that you get from, yes.
Right, and a different way it's evaluated as well.
The Nobel Peace Prize passed, so we're going to be able to run that competition this time around.
And we won the border control, I saw.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Okay, so yes, we get the big screen announcing the onset of the Nobel Peace Prize. Mm-hmm. It has evaluated diplomatic favor earned in the start of the turn. So since the World Congress turn finished, we went into this new turn. Players were awarded diplomatic favor. We're earning 10 a turn, but we actually, we can see why Matthias had a big bank of favor.
Yeah.
He's good at city-state stuff. And city-states give you favor, so.
That's probably where he's getting his from.
Yeah.
So we would continue to pursue that then, and then hopefully that would place us on top. We would get that diplomatic victory point. We'd get all those great musicians and great scientists and be able to go on from there.
Right.
So that is, in a nutshell, how the Nobel Prizes work, and they're a good example of how the scored competitions work. And that's a pretty good look at Sweden's various abilities and kind of how they're going to be a player on the world stage. So thank you guys for coming on today.
Oh, thank you, Pete, for hosting.
Showing this off. I'd like to thank Carl for driving. And having to play a peaceful civilization was a difficult, out-of-character task for him, and I appreciate that he's willing to make that stretch
He tends to
for us.
find a way to make it not peaceful if it is a peaceful.
Definitely.
I didn't see a lot of peace there.
No, well, it's Carl. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Keep in mind that Civilization 6 Gathering Storm is coming out on February 14th. We're all looking forward to that. Again, pay attention to our social medias of the various varieties for continued information and updates. I'd like to thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next Firaxis live stream. Have a great day.